Hello and welcome to Your Experience Guide with me, Mike, and I'm going to be introducing a new series called Travel Tips with Mike. So, a common question that we get asked is, how do you afford to do the trips that you do? And the answer is quite simple but really complicated at the same time. For episode 1, we're going to look at travel tips, but before we look at travel tips, we're going to look at research. Doing your research at times can be really crucial to having a good trip and having it all go smoothly. So the first and probably the biggest thing is, when do you want to go? Where do you want to go to? And for how long? Because there's no point in looking at trips to America if you've got the budget for one day at Efteling, flying there, flying back and staying over for one night, for example. Or knowing about that you need how much leave you've got available from work. Top tip, because I've made this mistake myself. Don't book something until you've checked you can actually have the time off work. Because otherwise it becomes very difficult. So one of the websites that we will use quite regularly, it's a really cool website, is called Coast to Coaster. Now, if you've never used it before, coast2coaster.com, that's with a 2 in it, is a website that plots every single coaster in rcdb.com into Google Maps. So it shows you where every roller coaster in the world is. It's brilliant. Particularly if you're going a long distance, if you're going to America or you're going for a few days, you will know of maybe Cedar Point and Kings Island and Kennywood, but you might not know about that little park that's on the road you've got to drive down anyway, that's got a couple of creds that you can nip in or might be able to add on at the end of the day. But just a little word of warning here, do you really need them 17 extra wacky worms on your credit? Next thing to think about is, are you comfortable planning this trip yourself? It's not the easiest thing in the world. Are you comfortable about making travel arrangements, getting around stations, airports, getting taxis, getting trains? If you're not comfortable necessarily with doing that, or you're a first time or you'd like some help, might you be better looking at some sort of package deal? Now, this might be if you're going to Ventura, for example. Salou is a really popular holiday destination, so think about TUI, or I was going to say Thomas Cook, but they don't exist anymore. But think about booking a package deal to Salou, and then you can get yourself to Ventura from there. It's really easy to do. And then your flights, your hotels, your transfers are all dealt with. You don't have to worry about that. Just be aware if you do book your trips yourself. So if you do go to book a flight with Ryanair, go on booking.com and do your hotel, book your transfers yourself and all that sort of thing, and your park tickets. There is no atoll protection if, say for example, the airline you've booked with goes under while you're there. Whereas if you're in a package deal, if you've booked a package deal through an atoll registered travel company, they have an obligation to get you home and look after you somewhere down the line. If you've booked things yourself, you don't have that luxury. Now, just for reference, Atoll is the travel agent's sort of overseer, kind of like an ombudsman, and all good travel agents will be registered with Atoll. But like I say, that protection only applies if you book package only, so just be aware of that. And finally, on this sort of research, biggest thing is travel insurance. Make sure you've got travel insurance, because if anything goes wrong, you might well be left with a very big bill. Particularly, say you were to get ill in the US, something we take for granted in the UK is access to healthcare. You haven't got that in the United States, for example, and healthcare there is very, very expensive. I'm talking even like a doctor's, even just being seen might cost you 200, 300, 400 quid. So just be aware of that. Same as if your stuff gets nicked, or if you have problems with flights or transfers that affect your trip. Travel insurance is everything. loads of websites for this. Just check that they offer what you need. So be aware that if you've got existing medical conditions, you have to declare them, for example. Same with, you might want to still check for COVID protection just to be on the safe side. I know we've hopefully got out of all that sort of restrictions now, but just be on the safe side if certain countries might impose restrictions short term. Just be aware of it. We're going to look in a little bit more detail now at travel and flights. So how you get into your destination and also how you're getting around the area you're in. Again, I'll keep coming back to this point because it's huge. Research. How are you going to get there and what options you have available? And this will differ depending on where you're going, because there will be some places where you've got loads of options. Public transport's brilliant. You can get about quite easily yourself. There's other places that are in the back end of nowhere that you are going to need a car to get to. Great example of that is Blackpool Pleasure Beach versus Alton Towers. You can get to Blackpool Pleasure Beach, say you were an overseas visitor, or even ourselves, we will know. You can get to Blackpool Pleasure Beach a plethora of different ways, such as flying to Manchester. There's trains, there's coaches, there's buses. It's a park that's got its own train station, literally outside the park walls. Really easy to get to. Whereas if you were to go to Alton Towers, realistically, you're talking about driving. There is limited public transport, but it's not great. It's at funny times, it takes for ages, and it relies on being in a certain place at a certain time. So, and travelling abroad can be exactly the same. Somewhere in like Efteling, really easy to get to. Portaventura, really easy to get to. Cedar Point, literally the only way you can get into Cedar Point is by car. There is no foot access and there is no public transport there. So it's either a car or a taxi. So just to give that point. If you're doing public transport, think about, you don't necessarily have to fly, particularly if it's a local area. If it's sort of France, Belgium, Germany, Holland, and especially if you're southern based, think about the Eurotunnel. Rather than flying to your destination, use Eurotunnel at times. The fares are quite good, it's really fast, it gets you to where you need to be. And the fact that you take your own car on it means that you can get to the terminal really easily and you get off the terminal really easily. Also, buses, public transport, buses and trains aren't necessarily the best option. Sometimes a taxi might actually get to where you want to be cheaper than a bus or a train, or the cost is so negligible that it doesn't make any difference. Give you a great example here. Portaventura, recently we were in big groups, so we just got taxis to and from the park. Now, if you're going to get the bus, it's £2.50 or €2.50 a head, I think now. The taxi to the park was about, 10 or 12 euros. Well, between four of you, you're actually saving money, and you get door-to-door service near enough, and you don't have to rely on a bus that's seasonal that might not be very good. You might find, especially if there's 3 or 4 of you, that hiring a car for a couple of days is actually a better option than sort of getting buses or trains or however you want to get there, or even booking shuttles. We're going to assume that we're flying here now. How do you get the best deals on flights? First thing, again, know your options. Look at your options. You may find that your destination has more than one airport available. Barcelona and Reyes for Salou, for example. Or even here, you might find that the cheapest flight is not necessarily from your local airport. I live in Manchester. I'm not a million miles from Liverpool. Personal opinion, Liverpool Airport's better than Manchester Airport anyway, which pains me to say that, but there we go. But you might find that the flight is a lot cheaper from Liverpool than Manchester, and therefore if you can get a train up to Liverpool Airport for 10 or 15 quid, or even in the past, we once went to Edinburgh because the difference between Manchester and Edinburgh was £100 flying. So we flew from Edinburgh and got the train up there for about 15 quid. Okay, so you know what airports you've potentially got as an option. Now, who offers the best deal on that? And the best website for this is www.skyscanner.com. We're going to show a little bit of it here. But you can put in your departure airport and your arrival airport, your destination airport. Or you can search by country or area. So, for example, you could put Manchester in and search by the Manchester area, and it'll give you your options from Liverpool, East Mids, Leeds, Birmingham, for example, even a bit further afield. And then you could put in New York, and you've got 3 or 4 different airports in New York. You've got JFK, you've got LaGuardia, there's a couple of others in the vicinity. You've then got the option to filter on there by, do you absolutely definitely not want to stop, so you only want to do a direct flight? Of course, that might limit what days you've got. Best option might be to split your journey with 2 or more airlines. For example, I've flown from London to New York with one airline, then flew back from New York to Manchester with the other. Then all I had to sort out was getting to London from there on a train. Not too bad, really. Once you have found your deals when you're on Skyscanner, what you can then do is just find out what airline it is and just go to the airline and book your flights direct with the airline. It's highly unlikely in most cases that you're going to get a better deal through going through third-party websites. They can be a bit iffy with extras, and the other problem is that if you've booked through a third party, this has happened with certain airlines that might have a dark blue livery and a harp on them, that when there is cancellations, trying to get your money back's a nightmare, where the airlines had to refund your money. So go straight to the airline's website, download their app, go on the website, however you want to do it. Once you've done that, then you're on a flight. Now, more often than not, when you see a price on an airline's website today, that price is literally to get you on the plane. It doesn't get you a seat. It doesn't necessarily include any bags whatsoever, or if it does, it's a very small one. It won't include meals. It's really basic. So you're going to probably want to put some extras on here. Now, you're going to ask yourself, really, what extras do you realistically need? Some people might want to go all out and go, yeah, I'm going to pay for premium, I'm going to check a bag in, I'm going to have an extra bag, I want a legroom seat, and I want some food. If you're trying to work on a budget, you're asking yourself, do I really need all that stuff? Example, most airlines allow you to take a small backpack on. Now, if you're going somewhere for 2 days, potentially all you're going to want is a couple of changes of clothes, maybe a coat. Well, you can wear your coat, sorted. Couple of changes of clothes, and you can sort everything else out when you get there. You might find that you don't actually need to pay for a bag. Also, be aware here, don't click the first price you see. If you go a little bit further along the process, the price for your extras will be cheaper, because Ryanair and a lot of other websites offer like premium options, flexible tickets and that sort of thing. If you ignore that suggestion and work your way through the ticket, and top tip with Ryanair is just put priority boarding on at the end, because it includes your extra carry-on bag. If you check one hold bag in between the group of you and chip in towards it, you can take a little bit of extra clothes each, and you can take, you can put all your liquids and toiletries and whatever in there, if you want to. If you need to take a lot of sunscreens and that kind of thing with you, it might actually make a bit more sense to do that rather than you all paying for individual extra hand luggage. Final suggestion here is, if you're going to need somewhere to stay when you get there, quite a lot of airlines now offer package deals on flights and hotels, flights and car hire, flights and transfers, you can get a better deal with flights and hotel combinations at times. Particularly the other thing that might help you with is airlines such as British Airways. If you book more than one item in the package, so if you book flights and a hotel, for example, and this doesn't need to be a hotel at your destination, you might need to stay at, say you might be, if you're from Manchester, you fly from Heathrow, you might need somewhere to stop over the night before. When you do that, the airline will allow you to pay a deposit and then pay over a period of time. Might just help you with budgeting, make that £800-900 flight cost to New York a little bit easier to afford. I hope you found this first lot of hints and tips helpful. Next time I'm going to be looking at hotels in a lot more detail, how you can get your accommodation. For now, please like, subscribe, comment, ask me any questions. If I see some questions, I might cover them in the next video if they're a lot of the same thing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.